Welcome back to another episode of the Hardcore Casual with your boy Bass the Kid. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It is appreciated. Now, we had a nice little casual stream yesterday. A few things came out, so I want to expand on a couple topics from there. I've also got another little video to do after this for North Bank Brand, so shout out to you. But yeah, I want to expand on some of the stuff we saw in the press conference between Terence Crawford and Israel Madrimov, as well as a few other bits and pieces that have taken place over the last couple of days. So without further ado, let's get into it. So as was stated in the press conference yesterday, Terence Crawford versus Israel Madrimov will be for the WBA and the WBO interim championship at 154. So just to give everyone a brief sort of synopsis of how that plays out, since there is no unified champion at 154 apart from obviously Sebastian Fundora, the WBA title is just the WBA. There is no super champ at this point. So if that interim title, the WBO interim, becomes a full version of the title, provided a certain situation happens after, which I'll explain in a sec, then that belt will go from being the WBA champion to WBA super champion, because it will be a unified title. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everyone sort of understood how that sort of played out. Now, another piece of news that has been stated since then is that the fight between Virgil Ortiz and Tim Tszyu, provided that Virgil Ortiz comes through his Thomas Delorme fight on Saturday, will be for the interim WBA championship, which will mean that that person will then be mandated to face the winner of Madrimov and Crawford. And obviously, so that gives them the opportunity to get the first crack at the title. That also being said, but that other person has the WBO mandatory, which will take place at the end of the year. Now, what will happen obviously in that scenario is if Sebastian Fundora is unable to compete, which I think is probably going to happen, and he ends up vacating that WBO belt and just keeping that WBC, then it will be basically just a mandatory shot. But if that fight then happens, then the winner of Ortiz and Tszyu will basically, I guess, just kind of get held in the queue and wait for that 3-belt unification to take place at the end of the year, and then they will be the next in line for the shot. Now obviously I don't know if they will do some moving around and maybe delay that mandatory shot if, you know, someone gets all 3 of the belts, and then you say there's an opportunity right now to do the undisputed, which would be against Bakram Murtazaliev. So if that then happens, obviously they may delay that, say okay, you can do the undisputed, but then you have to fight the mandatory afterwards. But chances are, if it only ends up being a 2-belt, getting sort of that 2-belt, and Sebastian Fundora says that he's, you know, he won't compete or he's not able to compete, then they'll probably end up being the next opponent. So it would be, like I said, either Tim Tszyu or Virgil Ortiz next for the winner of this fight. You know what? I'm all here for it. I remember I was saying before, I actually criticized the card initially. I said it was a shit card when I heard, you know, that I thought Abner Mares and I think Leo Santa Cruz were supposed to be having their trilogy fight on the card. I had issues with Jose Valenzuela and Isaac Cruz, even though I think it's a good fight. I had issues with Valenzuela getting the title shot over Ishmael Barroso, especially as he's obviously mandatory, hasn't had his redemption yet after the horrible robbery he got against Rolly Romero. But after sort of that initial feeling subsided, I saw the fight for what it was. It's going to be a good fight, so I take back what I said initially. Plus, since when I initially made that point, that was before Andy Cruz against Antonio Moran had been added to the card. That was before Ortiz and Tszyu got added to the card. And it was also before that was also before David Morrell Jr. and what's his name, Radriad Kalajnik, Hot Rod Kalajnik as they call him, that one. So before all of those got added to the card. So yeah, I totally take back what I said. It's a very good card, one of the best cards put together in the US market in a long time. I would say probably over the last decade, definitely, probably within the last millennia. I would say that's a stretch. So from 2000 onwards, I reckon that's probably in the last sort of 24 years you could definitely recognize that. Obviously, you go back to the 90s, some of the 80s cards, there's some there's some tall tasks to beat some of those cards that was put together, but this one, no real complaints, no issues with it, and it's probably going to end up being another pay-per-view on the UK side of the zone. But you know what, I'll be prepared to pay for this one. So good job, well done. So Oscar De La Hoya is doing another madness on socials, Twittex, on Instagram, basically along the lines of saying, no outsider is going to come into America and take over what I've built, or what I'm doing, etc., etc. I'm a fighter at heart, and I'm going to fight for my position. I'm going to fight for the legacy of the country, blah blah blah. And then subsequently, most people thought he was referring or trying to refer to His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh, because obviously he's doing the card with Terence Crawford and Israel Madrimov. He then, there's a couple of photos of, Devin Haney with Eddie Hearn, whereby, Devin is in a photo in an embrace with Eddie after the fight. And, he's like, well, look, good luck with Eddie, you're British promoter or you're European promoter. But, Ryan's the champion. There's not going to be any rematch. And this guy who's trying to make it in the US, then he's saying to Eddie, just stick to the UK, stick to the British boxing market, and leave the American market where boxing matters to, basically to me. You've done nothing, you've built nothing over here, despite the amount of hundreds of millions you've basically squandered. And Eddie essentially come back is like, are you genuinely feeling okay? Like, look, you had a great win over the weekend, yet all you're doing is thinking about me. Like, ultimately, what's wrong with you? I'm a global promoter. I've got 18 world champions in my stable. You've got 4. Like, ultimately, Eddie's saying, like, mind who you're talking to, because, like, you're actually, like, chump change to me right now. And if you look at, obviously, the Forbes list, Matchroom is the #1 boxing promotion in the world at the moment in terms of, like, revenue generated. They're in the top 5 of all combat sports. That's including like WWE, AEW, like UFC. They're in the top 5 there. They're the #1 in boxing. I think it's $850 million is their net worth. I believe Top Rank are second with 650 million. Then PBC are third with, I think it's 600 million. And then Golden Boy Promotions are 4th in that run with, I think it's 450 million. So you're not even in the top 3 promoters in the game right now in terms of money revenue generated, but you're talking all of this slick talk. It's becoming a bit embarrassing, and I don't really understand how we even get to this situation. Obviously they had to do that sit down a month or 2 ago with Chris Mannix, where they was talking through different things, and Eddie was like, yeah, I mean, we get on fine. I don't have any issues with him per se. Sometimes he'll say things and he's like, yeah, sometimes it's just a bit of just letting you know, like, obviously this is something I take passionately. This is something that I've built that I'm very protective of. But he seemed cordial, and every time I've seen the two of them in the same environment together, like, De La Hoya don't keep that same energy that he seems to be keeping on socials. But the thing is, outside of all of that, I don't really understand what the drama is. Like, you two, you're not even technically rivals on on the same platform. Like, you're collaborators. The whole point of the two of you being on the zone, obviously Golden Boy was brought on there to sort of help bolster the content, because you couldn't expect, you know, Eddie Hearn and Matchroom to do everything, especially when they still had UK commitments. And this was at the time when they were still working and had their British shows on Sky TV. So they couldn't do everything in the US, so they needed an additional partner. Since DAZN basically took their entire catalogue now, it's, if you're gonna be totally honest, there's actually less of a need for Golden Boy in that sense. But they're good to be there. They have some really good fighters. They put on surprisingly very good shows that normally fly by. There's never really big breaks in between fights and all that. So there's some good stuff there. You got the OTX boxing, all that stuff. All of these places, like the OTX, the Dimitri Salita promotion cards that are on there now, I think they've got international rights to a lot of the Wasserman cards. They've got Golden Boy, they got Matchroom, and obviously now you got the Queensbury link up, so on the big occasions you'll get those cross promotionals there. Like, you don't need to be competing against the guy that's on the same network as you, except for my fighter's gonna beat your fighter, my fighter's gonna destroy your fighter. That's the only thing you need to be talking about. But in terms of, oh, you're bad for, like, get out of here, this is my ends and what, like, that's stupid. There's no legitimacy and there's no reason for you to be going on like that. Like, he's tapped. Oscar's got some tapped behaviors. It's, some of it might be the drugs he's been taking, and some of it might be, you know, maybe it's delayed onset dementia from and CTE from the punches that you took as a professional. And I'm not even saying that to try and be funny. It could legitimately be things like that. But it's just embarrassing the way he, especially it's like almost that bipolar flip-flop nature. Like, in a man's face, you're not giving that same energy of, okay, you're not walking like you're a boss when you're in front of him. It's all hugs and loves and, oh yeah, you know, great for the sport, great to be here and rare. But in the background is when you've got issues and when you want to pipe up. I don't respect that kind of behavior. Anyone who knows me, look, I've said this numerous times, I'll say it again last time and I won't say it after that. Whatever I say on this channel, I stand on it, and I have to stand on it, because if someone challenges me to it in person, what can I do apart from, yeah, okay, I said that. So I'm not going to say something on here, and then when I see you and there's a reason for me to say it to you, I'm not going to say it to your face as well. Or I'm going to try and lie and act like I didn't say something, or I didn't mean it the way it came out. You know, okay, sometimes maybe that is the case. You might say, okay, I didn't actually mean it how you've interpreted it. This is what I meant, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, if you step to me, I've got to stand on what it was I said. Yes, I said this. This is why I said it. If there's a problem, cool, there's a problem. If there's not, cool, there's no problem. We can carry on, keep it moving. That is how I am, and that's the sort of standard I'm going to hold other people to. So all this stuff that Oscar's doing, I can't lie to you. To me, it's clown shit, and it's in bad taste, it's in bad faith, and it's just bringing him and his business into disrepute. You know, fix up, get to the number 3 position, get to the number 2 position in those Forbes ratings and those rankings in boxing. Then maybe you can start talking that greasy, this is my country, leave it to me. Why is anyone going to leave it to you when you as a company are worth half what the other guy's worth? So clearly he's doing something that you're not doing. So yeah, that's got all my thoughts on that. I just think he's acting like a bit of an idiot at the moment. It's a bit embarrassing to watch, but yeah, hopefully he will fix up sooner or later, because if he doesn't, the rest of the decent guys he's got in his stable is going to bounce the same way that Canelo did, the same way that Ryan is trying to. Like, understand your limitations and be humble. So following his victory over the weekend following Ryan Garcia's big victory over the weekend against Devin Haney, he recently came out on social media and basically said that it was Floyd Mayweather who told him to basically blow the weight, come in 3 pounds over, not try to make it, obviously for him to stay strong and to have the best chance of, you know, imposing his size and his will over Devin Haney. Now, I totally could believe that Floyd did that because, you know, they do have a pretty full relationship. Now, Floyd denied that he was the one that gave Ryan Garcia the footage of the spar between Tank Davis and Devin Haney, but, you know, Ryan Garcia said, yeah, I got the footage from Floyd. So, you know, someone somewhere is lying in that situation. But off the back of that, we saw there was an Instagram live that took place between Bill Haney and Floyd Mayweather on Tuesday, and you know, it was 10 minutes. As I said on the stream yesterday, it's the kind of situation where I would have preferred not to have that kind of interaction out in public for people outside of that culture, so to speak, to look on and pass judgment on, especially with certain things that were said within it. Now, with that, I kind of look at it, and from what I saw of it, the way I've kind of deciphered it is ultimately, from what it appears, Floyd Mayweather has been doing things behind the scenes to either stunt Devin Haney's growth, to maybe undermine him, or to prevent him from getting certain opportunities. And he's been doing that because he wanted Devin to sign to him at the time when, I guess, Tank was due to sign and all of that. And, you know, Floyd wanted to give out, I guess, a salary or a you know, like a monthly allowance or something like that. Whereas Devin and Bill, obviously, they wanted to be the boss of their own ship. Maybe more of a partnership, so they didn't sign with Floyd, and Floyd sort of took that a bit personally. That's where it kind of seems like, based on what was said in the interaction. Now, of the two, there was salient points made by both sides, but they were for different reasons. So Bill Haney essentially said that Floyd was a narcissist, or like basically everything's got to be about you. And, you know, what have you done? Like, what have you done in life? You talk about this 50-0 record, your record under the lights. He's like, okay, cool. Well, like, to hell with your record under the lights. Like, in life, what have you done? What else can you stand on and say, I did this and X, Y, Z? Which could be a fair point. But on the flip side, because obviously Bill was talking about Devin and Floyd being in spars together and whatnot, and, you know, Floyd was like, okay, cool, well, you know, if your son's the undefeated champion of spars, that's good for him, but under the lights is where it matters. Ultimately, you need help with him, and your ego of not letting people come in and, I guess, run this ship or help you to steer this ship is going to ultimately affect your son. So listening to that, I kind of got both sides of that. Then there was obviously talking about Bill saying, well, you know, I'm for the streets and whatever. Now, I sort of looked at that a little bit different to the way that some other people did. Obviously, I know he was deep in the streets to start off with, but when he said now that, like, I'm still in these streets, like, I'm undefeated in these streets, I get love in these streets, and I basically show love in these streets. It sounded to me that what he was saying is that he ain't forgot where he comes from, and he's trying to be out and give back to sort of that next generation of where he comes from, and Floyd doesn't do that. And they was talking, obviously, he's like, well, Floyd, some of your kids is in these streets right now. Floyd said, you know, I didn't grow up in no suburbs, but I didn't have to be in the streets because my dad stopped me. I saw what my dad did, so I didn't need to be in the streets. And Bill's like, well, yeah, well, I was in them streets, and because I was in them streets, like, Devin ain't in those streets. He's good because of what I did. And he's like, but your kids is out here in the streets, like, right now, acting out, doing X, Y, and Z, when they should be looking at you and being able to see you as the inspiration for them not to need to go down whatever lifestyle they're going down. Now, Floyd, to a degree, afterwards had a good point where he said, look, when kids get to a certain age, they're going to do what they want to do, and at that point, that's when you disassociate yourself from them, you detach from them. But Bill was like, well, no, like, you shouldn't detach from your kids. You should be the example, so that your kids ain't out here doing X, Y, and Z. And you should be in their lives, like making sure that they're straight, so that the things that they're getting up to, they don't need to get up to. So I kind of saw that from both sides. And when Bill's like, look, I've been in the streets basically telling people to stay away from your kids, like making sure that your kids don't be getting into no foolishness, or people ain't trying to steer them wrong because they're Mayweather babies. And you don't even appreciate that, yet you're here like trying to, you know, do foul shit to Devin. That's kind of how it all played out to me. Now, I could be wrong in my interpretation, but from what I heard, that's how it that's how it kind of looked. So both people had valid points. I think based on what I heard throughout the entire 10 minutes, I feel that Bill had more points that I sort of resonated with than Floyd did. But when it came to obviously like the ring stuff and ultimately Devin's career, I definitely feel that Floyd won the exchange there, because ultimately if it's a war between the two of them, well, at the minute, like, Floyd's up and Bill's down. So I feel like they need to come together and try and squash that in some way, shape or form. I did kind of find it a bit funny at the end of it when Floyd was like, look, Bill, you got my new number, like, call me, like, let's get off of here, let's talk, like, properly, call me. And he's like, no. I found that funny, because in my head I'm thinking to myself, I can understand that, because if you're saying that you want to sort things out and you're talking about, I must call you so that we can sort things out, well, no, if you really want to sort it out as you claiming, then you call me. When we get off of this, you call me behind the scenes and squash it, if that's really what you want. Say, because if, you know, whoever calls first, I guess you could say, is a bit, you lose a bit of power in that situation. So it's too stubborn. Ultimately, it's two stubborn near 50-year-olds, like, not really wanting to back down. So I understand some of that there. One thing I will say though is, even if it's a case of you're in these streets like trying to give back to the community, that's cool, but do that from afar. You know, don't glorify the fact that you're still in these streets, or you've still got love in these streets, because some people ain't going to be able to discern the difference between you glorifying or acting as if you're still living that street life, or doing certain things, or having certain connections to the streets, to the roads, and actually just sort of trying to give back to people so that they don't have to go down the same routes that you went down. So I feel like maybe, you know, let's not talk about the fact of either what you are or what you used to do in them streets. Like, let's leave that alone. And on Floyd's side, well, Floyd's gonna be Floyd. I don't think he's gonna change for anyone at this point. That's kind of the way I saw it. Please feel free to let me know how you saw it, and if I'm totally wrong, tell me I'm totally wrong, because I'm quite happy to be educated on that one. But from what I heard, that's sort of how it played out to me. And last but not least, obviously we had the announcement of Chris Billam-Smith and Richard Riakporhe taking place at Selhurst Park on, I believe it's the 22nd of June. It's either the 22nd or the 15th, but I think it's the 22nd. I could be wrong, it might be the 15th, it's one or the other. Either way, that's taking place at Selhurst Park. Initially, we heard that Boatsi and Anthony Yarde were supposed to be on this card. Haven't really heard much from either. Well, we've heard a lot from Boatsi, almost basically trying to go for Yarde, saying, well, yo, where you at? I'm trying to, you know, let's get this work done, basically. But Yarde was talking a lot about, you know, he wants to be active, you know, he wants the big fights, but he needs to be active like in December. And then we're coming up to May now, no news of a new fight date. We don't really know what's going on. I think it was September he said that, actually. And then I think I can't remember the last time he fought, to be honest. The last one I remember was on the Zhang Joyce 2 undercard, but I think he fought since then, I think. Yeah, obviously you got Joshua Boatsi. Actually, yeah, you got Joshua Boatsi as well, who's basically trying to be active. He said we went to boxer for activity, and thus far that doesn't seem to, you know, sort of paid off either. So hopefully that can coincide with that card. But also on that card now, Isaac Chamberlain and Michelle Cieslak has been it's booked on that card as well for the EBU, European Cruiserweight title, which is a, you know, it's a valid step up for Isaac. It's definitely sort of the right time for it to go for it, and obviously that going for that title justifies vacating the British. Obviously we know the timing of when he vacated the British wasn't necessarily a great thing, but that is the situation there. So that's a good fight to be on the card. If you can get Boazzi and Yard on the card as well, that's 3 very, very big fights. 2 of those people are Crystal Palace fans, although one of them has their fanship in question. Richard, sorry, I got to look at you on that one. But you got that, obviously. So if you got Yard, Boazzi on there, you've got Billum Smith, Riakporhe, and you've got Chamberlain and Sislak, or Sislak and Chamberlain, because Sislak is I guess is the EBU. Yeah, I'm sure that card's gonna find its way onto Sky Sports box office, and you know what, I'll pay for it. Like, that's 3 very, very good fights. And if you can put another little something on the undercard, I'm sure Caroline Dubois will get on the undercard as well. Maybe for a version of a WBA, if that's in play for the time being. Yeah, sign me up. But yeah, a little quick one on that. I think it's about time. Obviously it couldn't take place in Bournemouth due to the pitch not being able to be ready in time, because they need the time for the following season. But all good. Let's wait and see sort of what happens with there. I will give my thoughts on the fight properly closer to the time, and predictions, whatever, but at least it's been announced now. Riakporhe has been a bit inactive as of late. He had a spell of inactivity before. I'm hoping that isn't a pattern that continues, but I will be seeing him and Chris next week, so hopefully I can get some time with both and we can sort of see what's going on. But with that being said, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share. More videos to follow after this. That's the Hardcore Casual out.